From the beginning of Moses' life, you know that he's dedicated to something. That his life is meant for something bigger than just walking on this earth. And I loved so much the song that Tim picked out for us to sing today, where it says in the song, it says that, God, I don't want to just talk to you or talk about you like you're not here. But I want you to be like ingrained in my soul, that everything I do is a matter of you. Like I want you to come and just completely set my heart on fire. You see, Moses is that guy. There's been people in the Bible that have been those people. You see, the book of Acts kind of stuff isn't just like a cultural thing, but the book of Acts is a group of people whose life and their hearts have been caught on fire by God. They're ordinary people created for an extraordinary thing. That's you. And a lot of times we don't realize it. We don't understand because we're a bunch of knuckleheads. Because we completely mess up all the time. Because we always run to those things that we're not supposed to. Because we watch those things we shouldn't watch. Because we hang out with those people we shouldn't hang out with. Because we say those words that we shouldn't say. And we always think to ourselves, maybe deep down for some of you, you're like, God could never truly love me. God can never really use me because I'm messed up. Because I'm not as good as Pastor Eric who preaches. Or I'm not as good as Chad or as funny as Junior. Or I'm not good at anything. God doesn't want to use me because I'm screwed up. And as I read through the book of Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy, and as you get to the end of Moses' life, you realize how screwed up he was. A lot of you guys remembered one particular thing, and one particular thing kind of stood out to you. And that's that idea of Moses coming down off the mountain, and he throws the 10 Commandments, right? He throws it at the base of the mountain and goes, you guys are a bunch of idiots. Because the real God, the God who Moses, has been talking to face, who really loves you, is doing everything to see you succeed. But you guys, you idiots, are down here creating this golden calf to worship because you don't quite understand how great God is. Guess what? You and I are those people worshiping golden calves. Yeah. My iPhone, my MacBook, my favorite TV show, those things I idolize over God as if those things are going to complete me. As if those things are going to help me in the recesses of my soul figure out why I'm walking this planet. Imagine now, God walks up to you and says, you're standing on holy ground, and I want to do something magnificent with your life. Imagine. At the beginning of Moses' life, he is this complete and utter mistake maker. He grows up very rich, and for 40 years, he ignores his culture. And then one day, he decides, the Bible says in the book of Acts, that Moses decides to go and meet his people where they're at. His people at this point are slaves. They're slaves, literally. And he decides to go and hang out with them. This is what happens. Go ahead and check out this verse in the book of Exodus. It says this. It says, time passed about 40 years. And it says, Moses grew up, and one day he went and saw his brothers, saw all that hard labor. Then he saw an Egyptian hit a Hebrew, one of his relatives. He looked this way and then that. And when he realized there was no one in sight, he killed the Egyptian and buried him in the sand. Mistake number one. You know, Moses has obviously been chosen for a reason by God. Some of you in your little skits had that, you know, the basket floating down the river. If you guys don't know anything about Moses, Moses was a baby once, just like you were. And the king of Egypt decided, hey, I'm going to kill all of these newborn baby boys. And so Moses' mom puts him in this little basket and bids him farewell on the Nile River. And the Egyptian princess, Pharaoh's daughter, finds this baby in a basket and raises him as her own. Pretty lucky, right? Pretty extraordinary, right? Because God had a plan for Moses. And for 40 years, Moses ignored it. And then one day, Moses decides, hey, I'm going to go check out to see what my people are actually doing for my step-parents, my adopted family. And he sees this man beating, whipping, oppressing one of his relatives maybe not like his brother or cousin, but one of his own people. And he snaps and he kills the guy and buries him. Not what you would expect from a prophet of God, right? The beginning of Moses' ministry is a complete and utter failure. More so, instead of standing up and doing what you and I would know is right and going to the authorities and saying, yeah, I killed this guy, what does Moses do? He runs away. So he commits murder, and then he becomes a fugitive of the law. Not exactly the same way that you and I would attribute to someone going and serving God their entire life, right? 40 more years pass by. Moses is now 80 years old. And this is what happens. And Moses is out in the wilderness. He's a shepherd. He goes from being the king, not really the king, but like the prince, if you will, of Egypt, in the royal court, to being a shepherd in the middle of the desert. And he sees something afar off. And it says, Moses said, what's going on here? I can't believe this. Amazing. Why doesn't the bush burn up? Now you got to imagine, he's in the middle of the desert, storms happen all the time, lightning strikes, trees catch on fire, and what happens when something catches on fire? It burns up and it falls apart, right? Moses sees this bush on fire, attributes it probably to some sort of, natural disaster or some sort of thing, but he looks at the bush and it doesn't burn up. Now, if I catch this piece of paper on fire and it doesn't burn up, how many people are going to be I'm
going to cry.
Yeah, going to be kind of tripped out, right? I don't know about crying. That's kind of going a little far, but I'll be tripping out. So he goes over and he checks it out, and God speaks to him and says, hey, you're standing on holy ground, Moses. Take your shoes off. And not only that, but I'm calling you to something greater. Miracle number 1. A burning bush that doesn't burn up. Seemingly simple, but a miracle nonetheless. 80 years old, Moses begins to start his public ministry. There's a few other things that happen in Moses' life. There's a few other extraordinary events, and there's a few other terrible, terrible mistakes. And we're going to check out a few of those right now. Go to the next verse, please, Chad.